My biggest piece of advice to everyone is if you're not getting that support, you've got to, number one priority, find groups of women wherever they are. It could be virtual, it could be in real life, and align yourself with those women, because they're going to tell you that it's okay, that you can do it, and they're going to show you the way, and they're going to lock arms with you.
I'm Anne Marie McQueen, journalist and proud 50-ish woman, and we are here looking for the true truth in perimenopause, menopause, midlife, and beyond.
Opening our minds to other possibilities is not always easy.
Pop, I think.
You're all woman to me. All right, Anne Marie.
Okay, so this is a bit of a funny one, basically. I recorded this podcast almost a year ago, and it fell into, that old gap where you take a short break to build your business and then your dad dies suddenly. You guys all know that, right? That is how it came to be that I interviewed Jen Marples in November of 2023, and it's only coming to you now. It is such a great conversation that I think it still stands up, and I talked to Jen, and she's down with it. So I love her. She's one of those people I met on social media. She's a hardworking, accomplished entrepreneur and champion of midlife women. Has had 25 years in PR and marketing. She runs the Jen Marples agency, and her goal is to help women over 40 get seen, heard, paid, and to make an impact. She's also host of the Jen Marples show. Tagline, "You're not too fucking old." Soon to be just called "You're not too fucking old." We talk about that. We talk about it all, how you need to find supportive groups, friendship problems, ending friendships, dealing with ageism. Both of us can talk about the profound beauty and peace that comes with middle age and menopause. Jen believes you have to be a strong advocate for your own health. She talks about the essential book, The Upgrade by Dr. Luann Brizadine. I also love it. I have it on my shelf behind me. She offers advice on how and why you need to prioritize your own healthcare, even if you need to pay out of pocket and sacrifice some things. And she talks about her own journey, very challenging, dealing with endometriosis, IVF, perimenopause, massive burnout, and how she ultimately reclaimed her vitality through rest and, like all of us, reinvention, and getting her sleep back through the power of hormone therapy. And I just wanted to thank Jen, because she is on the west coast of the US, I am in Abu Dhabi, and she delayed her nightly progesterone wind down for us. And that is very meaningful, I know. So without further ado, here is Jen Marples from November 2023, still very relevant in September 2024. Do you worry about being censored on social and on in podcasting, or how do you deal with that?
Well, I do actually get censored. The Instagram people, they all want to censor me. And it's funny because the actual title, if you're searching for it, thank you for talking about that. It's called The Jen Marples Show, and the tagline's "You're not too fucking old." But I'm just about.
Oh, sorry, I bungled that.
Oh no, it's fine. But I think most people think that that's what the title is, and that's
okay.
Great. It's intentional, and that's the whole gist of the whole thing, is that you're not too fucking old to do whatever you want in this life. And so that's my reason for being. And I knew I would take a hit, using the F in it all. And when I was going out and recording my podcast intro 2 years ago, and I kicked it off, I did one intro. I was like, "And remember, you're not too old." I'm like, did that pack a punch? No. And then I recorded the second intro, which was "You're not too fucking old." And I heard one of my teen girls go, "Yes, Mom," in the background. I was like, all right, I think we landed on something. I have a very dear friend, Lee Caraher. She's an old PR colleague. She owns a PR firm in San Francisco, New York. And she was like, "You've got to just say fucking." And the reason for it is that it's a passionate cry. It's to wake people up and to shake you kind of out of your stupor, to listen that you're not too old. So it's like this rage against the patriarchy and advertising and everything that tells women that we're to this or we're to that, or we're not this or we're not that. So it's just meant to rattle us and to get you thinking. Because I'm 54, and give me a break. Like, I feel, and I know we've talked about this at length before, Anne Marie, like, I feel the best I ever have. We'll talk about hormones too, because thanks to a new hormone patch, I'm actually feeling really great. But just focused and know that women can do anything. And the only reason we think we can't is because we've been told, not by other women, but by society, that somehow we expire after the age of 40, which I feel like, I remember feeling old at 40. And now I look back at that, I'm like, oh, that was a baby. I'm like, I'm 54. I'm like, 40 was a baby. But I have talked to women, Anne Marie, in their late 30s who would feel like they're getting too old for the corporate world. And it's so sad. And that's why I'm on my mission and my soapbox to bring awareness to the world that we're not too fucking old.
Okay, two things just before we get into it. We have seen so much in our lifetimes. There's such like a tremendous amount of change. And I love swearing. And I've always paid attention to the studies. You know, you're dumb if you swear, you're less intelligent, you're more intelligent. You know, the gamut, it's just run ever since we've been reading media since we were teenagers. And I don't think it means anything. I don't think it means anything. It's a punctuation in proper company, right? Like that's all it is. And when you talk about women in their late 30s, when I was 39, I went to a yoga retreat in the middle of the jungle in Sri Lanka, a place called Opota. That's amazing, an Ayurvedic center. And I was in that mood at 39. I'm old. It's over. There were a whole bunch of cool people there. And we had to see an Ayurvedic doctor. And there was one woman there who was young and beautiful. And she was having a romance with this handsome man from America. And I was jealous of them. And I was stewing. And I was visiting the Ayurvedic doctor, and her chart was on the desk. She was 39. It was awesome. It was awesome. I was like, oh my gosh, there it is, right? Like she didn't think she was too old, and I thought I was too old. It's a definite mindset. So let's talk about that, because somewhere along the line, you know, you're too fat, you're not smart enough, gets replaced with you're too old. I don't know what day it happened to me. So can you just talk about, did that happen to you? And how did you deal with that? You said at 40, how did you deal with that first part to get to here at almost 54?
Yeah, it's interesting just thinking about, as you were talking, I was kind of thinking, even when I was turning 30, my husband and I lived in Taipei for 2 years. So we moved there and I was 28 and I turned 30 over there. I remember even thinking, gosh, I don't want to turn 30 because there's something, it's all that societal stuff, because it says the 20s are going to be the best years of your life, and then this and that. And so we just have it embedded in us. All of a sudden we all wait to be 21, at least in the US, so we can be legal to drink. It's like downhill from there. And certainly, you know, when I was in my early 30s, the medical community will tell you you're too old, because I stopped, you know, I got off birth control pills and was trying to have a baby, and all of a sudden you go to talk to doctors and now you're geriatric at 32. You're like, what? 32. And so that was a whole journey. And so I'm like thinking, oh my God. So, you know, you kind of women first, I think, really encounter this ageism feeling, especially when they go to have babies and things aren't working. And it's like, we're all having babies later, just kind of in general these days. And you're ancient at, literally, they call you ancient at 30 when you want to try to have babies, which is crazy. And sidebar, I had my first at 35, second and third at 37, but I had to go through IVF. That's a long, dramatic story. I will spare you. But 40 was interesting because I was still living in the city in San Francisco. I just live right across the bridge now. And that was a big one. I was like, am I saying goodbye to like my hipness? You know, I'm turning 40 in the city. And I was like, this really cool place in the Mission District, and had this raging rocking party. And then I was like, you know, the years after that, I think 45 was another big one. I'm like, oh, I just kept thinking, and I really didn't want to turn 50, Anne Marie. So this is a long-winded way of saying I really embraced it around 51, because when I was turning 50, I had been, you know, doing PR consulting on the side and had been reaching out and doing events for women and things like that. But it was for the first time, I was like, for a birthday, I'm like, do I put my cake on Instagram? Like, do I state out there that I'm 50? Because I didn't fully embrace it. And I had been, you know, out there kind of looking around, like, do I want to actually go find a job? I was talking to some recruiters. I was talking to just some contacts I know. Do I want to do more continued consulting? And resoundingly, I was getting the feeling and the feedback that, honey, you are too old to even be thinking about doing marketing in the corporate world. And I was told it actually directly. 2 reasons, like, you're not going to get paid. People want somebody with 8 years experience, not 20 plus years experience. And it goes on and on. And that happened at the same time a big discussion was raging on LinkedIn. A friend of mine had posted about looking for a job and feeling old. And then just literal thousands of comments of everybody feeling like they were getting put out to pasture in their 40s, not to mention 50. And then one day I woke up, I'm like, I cannot do anything about my age. I want to support women. So I was saying on another podcast, actually, that I created my whole business basically because of my age and in spite of it. So it's like, there's nothing you can do. And I'm like, why? And I started really thinking, like, why are we feeling this way? It's not because we don't have anything to offer. In fact, as you well know, with all the experts you talk to, we are primed right now. We are like at this beautiful phase in life to really thrive and really take on big projects. If it's starting a business or writing that book or whatever it is. So I'm like, well, who's saying it? Oh, the patriarchy, advertising. So we're never, literally never in the history of time has a woman been just right. You're too young, you're too old, you're too quiet, you're too loud, like all of it. And it just pisses me off. And there are so many women. In fact, I had a woman reach out to me after listening to a podcast saying, can you do a podcast episode on what all of us women can do to look and act and feel younger so we can get jobs? And it broke my heart. And I know it's real. I know what's happening out there. And I really feel like ageism is that last little bit in the whole DEI equation. Like we're just not really addressing that enough. And I think the world needs everybody to go around. Like I'm pro women, but I'm pro men. I'm pro everyone. I just think equality, balance. We all need, the world needs all of us to make the world go round. And the other thing too is, and this is really important, is that ageism has very real financial impacts on women. Somebody just posted an article, I can't remember where it was from, and then asked the comments, like, why do you think women feel more financial insecurity later in life? I'm like, well, first of all, you haven't been paying as much as the men. And secondly, women are worried about working. And we've also, I could go on, Anne Marie, I'm getting in my soapbox, but we've also done our own share of all the unpaid labor out there, taking care of kids and aging parents and all of that, helping the economy thrive because we're all doing two jobs and one's unpaid. And there's plenty of other people who talk about that, but it's all of this. So it can be very real and dangerous. But at its core, I just want women to know that you're amazing and you're awesome and you can do whatever you want. You just need to align with the right people, find people like us, listen to our podcast, get inspiration, because I only bring on women who are 40 plus. And these are women leaders, doctors, whomever, and I extract their wisdom. And I'm inspired every day. I'm inspired every day by women like you, Anne Marie, and all the women I know that you talk to who are killing it, finding solutions for real problems. And guess what? You don't have to do anything big too. You can just decide you want to go drink martinis in the Bahamas. Great. Just know that you deserve it and you get to do whatever you want. So I get really fired up about this. You can tell.
No, I'm so glad. Well, I heard someone said ageism is the last ism. And also, I feel this is a conditioning on so many levels that we've had since we were children. And then it's just amplified for women, right? Like I find every day I look at things and I'm like, oh yeah, that's not what I thought it was. Oh yeah, that's not what I thought it was. And then there's the being a woman on top of it, where you never really have been the right age. I feel like I just blinked and I was 26 in my first journalism job getting a kicky bob so I would look older and people would take me seriously. I'm thinking of getting one now, so that's why I was laughing. It's been so long and the conditioning is so strong. And you seem like you had sort of like a come to Jesus moment. Do you have these, how do you break down this thing inside of you that's been ingrained forever and by some of the people closest to us? Like that's the thing, is like it's perpetuated by it's coming from inside the house sometimes, you know what I mean? It's coming from friends, it's coming from family members, it's coming from people in your social circle. You're really swimming against the tide here. You're going the opposite way on the IKEA floor. How do you do that on a daily basis?
First of all, it's funny. I was just laughing internally. I just posted yesterday, a friend of mine had sent me a clip of the Sex and the City movie number 1, where Samantha was in the boutique and she was looking for like the sexy dress to go wear to like the Oscars or something. And the lady, I don't know if you saw the movie, but this woman was like, oh, she picked the dress. Isn't that a little old for you? And she's like, well, how old do you think I am? And she's like, and for what it's worth, I'm 50 fucking 2. And I'm like, it's really about that. It's embracing it. But to answer your question, I have the benefit of a very strong mother who's actually still working at 77. And she's so youthful in spirit and she loves what she does. She just opened up a new real estate office in Hawaii. I mean, she could hang it up. My dad's retired and he's kind of like sitting, and we're kind of like looking at my dad like he can't keep up. He can't keep up with all the women, but and he can, but it's like, why do men retire? Women just seem to stay active. But she's very much like, when she says to her friend group, and she has friends that are younger than me, so she has friends of all ages, she mentors people, and they choke when she says, I have a 53-year-old daughter, because she's like, well, stop trying to do the math. But yeah, you know, I've got 53, she's my oldest. And that's my role model of it ain't over till we say it's over. Right. So I know I'm lucky that I came from that. And I've always been pretty strong willed. And I've, you know, I've stated what I want in life. But, you know, I still have been told all throughout, like, people want to push you down if it's the sexism. Oh, you're a nice girl, same as you. I looked young, and I owned my PR firm. I'd be in New York with all these like old school dudes. And I remember some man like trying to just put me in my place. Like, he literally said to me, aren't you a nice girl? I'm like, if you mean by nice girl, a 43-year-old woman who runs a PR firm, you know, doing crisis communications, and I was just I said it really nice, like, oh, aren't you cute? Like, come on, like, people are always trying to put us in our place. And I looked at my clients who are female, and they're like, how do you deal with this? And this is why I own my own business, and this is why I'm pro entrepreneurship too, because there is that reality of the ism, of the ageism. But I know everybody can't run their own business. It's hard, whatever. But it's a long-winded, passionate way of saying, if you don't have it within you, but you know that there's something where you've just got to align yourself with people that do have it and that see it in you, and say that it's possible. And so that's why I'm so passionate about my show. And like I said, I bring on only 40 plus women, so you can see women doing a huge array of things. Women who talk about walking through the flames and the fire and all the stuff that they've had to do to get to where they are and to succeed. And I know women at home, husbands don't support or partners don't support. And it's a real big inflection point. And so I think it's like the big shedding. It's the big looking at everything in your life and going, am I happy? Like, asking these questions. And like, I will answer one for you. Yes, you're still relevant. Yes. And another one. Yes, you get to be happy and you get to enjoy your life. If someone told me today and was just like saying, you can't do anything else, I'd probably like end it all, because I have so much energy. Like, and my kids will be out of the house completely in 3 years. I probably have 2 or 3 more businesses before it's all said and done. I don't know where any of this is going, but I just know that I want to help women, and I want to give them the tools too. So much of like my business coaching and marketing consulting, what I do for women, is helping them get that security, get that confidence, give them tools to go out and really step in the spotlight and shine, because most of the noise out there, 70% of the noise is men. So we have to work harder. We just do, to get out there. And that impacts our bottom line. You know, I know so many women right now who are like single moms, and they're doing it all on their own, and they don't have partners. I mean, it's like, for the sake of society and health, just for us to stay okay and safe, it's not like what's happening out there is not okay. So my biggest piece of advice to everyone is, if you're not getting that support, you've got to, number one priority, find groups of women wherever they are. It could be virtual, it could be, you know, in real life, and align yourself with those women, because they're going to tell you that it's okay, that you can do it, and they're going to show you the way, and they're going to lock arms with you. Trust me.
Yeah, you're a pivotal person to follow. I think back to when I was 46, 47, and I had sort of a life explosion. You know, all the things happened on all the fronts, like sort of a down on your knees moment. And I realized that I had all this negative programming in my head, and I didn't have women like you. There were, I'm sure there were, but I didn't. So I followed Will Smith and Gary Vaynerchuk. Like, that's how I started. I just watched every video that they had. And I feel like getting a little emotional, because I love those guys, because when you have two people that are your age, basically, and are just telling you you're not too old, you're not too old, you're not too old, you're not too old. That is why what you're doing is so important, because you take it in. And I think there's a lot of like, la, 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 with us being this age. I'm not listening. I'm just not listening. I'm just not, you know, because a lot of women say, oh, I feel invisible. And I'm like, I don't know. Am I invisible when I go someplace? I don't know whether I am or not, but I can go down the road of worrying that I'm invisible, or I can just see myself and pretend I'm not. So I'm so grateful that you're in the space. Okay. What did you learn about this from PR and marketing, from a PR and marketing perspective? Because it's so interesting that business is geared, and always has been, to young people when we have all the money.
Yeah, well, so two aspects of it. So the industry itself is a very young industry, and then you get older people in the profession who like work in house, like corporate communications, that type of thing. So all of us, because I started my own company in 2000, and the last time I ever worked for anybody was 2002. So I've been an entrepreneur for over 20 years, and a lot of it was just the crazy of the agency world, and working 16-hour days, and drinking or the Tums and Rolaids and the whatever, because I just had so much stress. That's another story for another time, if anyone's listening who is in like the crazy corporate PR thing. But in regards to sort of advertising in particular and how things are out there, and I've talked a lot about this lately, we are the people with the money. So we are the ones. Gen X has the most disposable income right now, and we are willing to pay for quality products and solutions. It's like our money's here. We're ready to give it to people who market to us. So it's just insane to me that people aren't talking to us. There's a woman, God, I can't remember her name right now. She runs an advertising agency. It's Fancy New York. I think it's Katie Keating. I think that's her name. I follow her on LinkedIn, and they represent companies that are that support like products that support women like 40 plus, and they just outline the data doesn't lie. We're the ones who are buying things and making the decision. So from just a pure financial like cash grab, all these big companies, you would think that they would be talking and targeting us. Now we're seeing more people come into it because I think they finally read the numbers. And it could be, you and I have been in this, and I consider us the OGs. We've been around for a while, and all these companies are now coming about. And it's really interesting what I'm seeing popping up to serve the midlife woman. And I'm like, I don't know how somebody who's in their 20s is running this company. I don't know. And then I literally, there's a company, I'm like, our moms use this product. I'm like, oh no, you didn't just say that. I'm like, how about you employ your mother to work at the company, for God's sakes? Oh my God, I could go on. But there's stuff that's happening now. I'm seeing it, but there's like a yin and the yang, or a good and the bad. There's stuff that's really great. I'm glad it's happening, and other stuff I'm like, ugh, like there's just a lot of noise, and let's see how it's all going to shake out. I know we're kind of in early days in all of it.
There's this tendency, and in this menopause conversation too, like women supporting women and empowering women. And you and I are all about that. You're not going to see me making crappy comments on social media. We're not going to see you making crappy comments on social media, making takedown videos of other people. But this is, it's not all that it seems. And you mentioned before we started recording that women are terrified to get started on their own thing that they might want to do and be on social media. And there's a reason for that, because we have experienced what it's like when another woman says you're doing too well, you're trying too hard, you're shining too much all our lives. It's a very subversive, very upsetting way that women tear down other women, and it is happening. And we are both relentlessly positive people. How do you deal with that? That is a reality. It's often other women.
It is. And someday I'll write a book, and I don't want to write a book on it because it would be negative, but I mean, I've experienced it and so many friends have experienced just negativity in the workplace from other women, unfortunately. And so it's something that's been prevalent, and I think it's also societal. And I know women have been pitted against each other. Again, the patriarchy, we were fighting. I think we're still fighting. We're fighting for equality, right? But back in the day, like how we were raised in sort of the 80s, 90s, and the one half of a fraction of a seat at the proverbial table, we were all told we had to fight. There was a scarcity mentality and a lack mentality. So everybody fought for everything, for guys and for jobs and for this and for that. And I don't think it's our actual human nature. I think that we're meant to be together and in community. So I think it's just been all the years of programming. There's a speech that I give, and I'm a firm believer that when we have negative thoughts about other women, they're not actually our thoughts. I really firmly believe they're society's thoughts. They've been placed in us from the patriarchy because we've been told there's scarcity and lack, or we've been, the advertising, you've got to be this way, you've got to be that way. I mean, we've been hearing these messages since we were so young, and God knows what the kids today are here, because they're just being inundated. So Lord help them. So it's not, so I challenge women when I give this particular talk that If somebody walks into a room and you're triggered by someone, instead of going, oh, who is she to wear that dress or have her hair that way or whatever you think is inappropriate, just stop for a minute and really think about it. Is that your thought? Or is that society's thought? Is that something that's been implanted on you? What if you flipped it and go, gosh, Anne Marie just walked in. Look at that hot bob she has. And she's wearing her ripped jeans and some top, and look at all her cool necklaces. Like, she has so much confidence coming in. And that's probably the trigger. It's the confidence. Like, how dare she? Because you're also shining that light on you. And you can examine that trigger of like, what is it about her? And it's because she seems confident. Maybe I'm not feeling very confident. Or she's walking in with like a guy, I'm just whatever. Or she's walking in a great outfit. I can't afford that outfit. I don't see myself. I really want to get married, but I'm not married. Just figure out whatever that is. And then examine why. It's information is what it is. There's nothing wrong with that person. And we cannot, like, once you start to live your life that way and you see and I grew up in Hawaii, everyone. So everyone wears bikinis. No one's covered up in Hawaii, fat, thin, young, old. We just rock it all and it doesn't matter. So you're like, look at that woman, like surfing with a bikini. She's like 80. Awesome. I want to know her. I want to know her secret. Like, how does she surf so well? Or how does that woman get up there and like give a good speech? Maybe like could teach me something. What could I learn from that woman? So we just have to flip that. I just expect more from people too. And so the second part of it is especially at this time in life, we don't have time to be surrounded by negative people. So I've pruned, people call it pruning the garden. If you're with some friend groups, always tearing down other people, why? There's so many more interesting things to talk about. Let's talk about starting businesses or training for a race or travel or kids, anything. But I have no part of any conversation that involves taking down another woman, ever. No. And I've walked out of dinner party conversation because of it, because it's just a waste of time. Well, and it's hurtful. And that one little conversation's happening over here. And if everyone's having this, it hurts the collective. So that's my urge and plea, is just to really think about that. I know I've been ranting on a lot. You've gotten me on a thing, Anne Marie.
No, it's beautiful. Now, you mentioned something really pivotal at this time, which is friendship loss. And I feel like I'm getting emotional because I've had this, where you're just sort of waking up to this kind of thing. And have you had friendship loss where you've had to sort of back away or distance yourself or had fallouts? And if so, how have you dealt with it? It's very painful.
It is painful. I can think of a couple different times in life. And one would be sort of my mid-40s, when I was, little did I know, experiencing horrible perimenopause. I had shut down my company. My kids were young. I hadn't taken any time off, and I was just sort of breaking down and blowing up. But I'm still helping people. I'm helping people with their divorces. I'm helping people get their jobs and this and that. And I remember I had somebody ask me, it was actually, I had my birth chart done. And this woman like just told me my whole entire life. She's like, who's actually looking out for you? And it was the first time that I looked at a couple friends going, they're sucking the life out of me. No one's asking me one question about my life. And I'm actually 100% legitimately falling apart. Like, I was seeing healthcare providers. I was sleeping like until noon on a Sunday because I couldn't get up, but I'm so wired to help. Oh my gosh, no one's asking me about me. It's kind of like those friends where you're like, I'm dying of cancer. And they're like, oh God, I have a really bad cold. And they go on for 5 hours talking about their cold. You're like, but I have cancer. I didn't have cancer. Showing that dramatic. So at that, I was like, I looked at that and I said, oh, okay. And like, you can't serve from an empty cup. I was depleted, like negative, to the point where my family was actually suffering. So, and you don't have to make this is the thing, everyone, you don't have to make a big pronouncement that we are not going to be friends anymore. You just back away. You back away, you stop hanging out. You can just back away and back out of it.
If you need a visual, Homer in the hedge, my friend's a neuroscientist, and she said the GIF Homer backing into the hedge, it's my favorite thing. That's it. That's all you need to do when you get the feeling. It's not easy, but I love that you said that.
Yeah, you back away. And then recently, like when I launched this podcast, and when you step up and out and you try to do new things, friends get kind of weird, and There was a friend who was weird about this, plus she was having her own issues. And we all have those friends that are going to just take us down. You can all put yourself in that position where there's that one friend where you've given all the advice. Like, you should have charged $395 an hour for your free therapy, Shingle. You should have hung up. They don't listen. They just want to complain. It's like having an addict or something. Only they can change their own lives. You don't owe it to anybody to sacrifice yourself and your own happiness and be in sort of harm's way to help everyone. People have full agency over their own lives and can help themselves. So there was a couple people in the not too distant past that, again, I had to just back away from. And it wasn't like I can't, and I'm not going to talk shit about them either. It's like blessed and release. I truly wish these people well. I actually, I'd loved them, but I have to love them from afar.
Yeah.
You can't help everybody. And I've got 3 children, a business, a husband who has a business. I got my own shit. And I have clients, I have other people I'm serving and doing all my things. Like, I'm doing my good deeds in the world. We all can't save everybody. Sadly, we all think we can, and we can't. But the best thing about this is when you can back away. And also too, for women listening who have kids, it's when your kids get to high school and like going to be off to college, your friends group really kind of changes too, because you're thrown together with a lot of people. So I know a lot of women say this. And when you're not thrown together, it's kind of like your situational friends. Like, they're great we were all great for each other for that time. But then, you're kind of pulling out, people are doing different things. And so now you're kind of left with, who do I like? And who am I hanging out with? Who are the true friends? And I've made so many new friends, Anne Marie, you're one included. If I'm just like starting this new business and doing this podcast, and I've joined like a leadership group, and I've met those women where all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I love you. And I've just met you for an hour. Can we be like best friends? But it's this different way. Like, you're coming at this like older, and there's no bullshit. It's like they're the veils drawn. There's nothing surface level. No one's trying to prove anything to anybody. And it's like, here we are. I'll just tell you one quick thing. I was in this leadership group a couple of weeks ago with everything happening in the Middle East. We're supposed to talk about a topic in this like solopreneurs group. We all got on, all different women, different businesses, different walks of life, different ethnicities. We all got on. I'm not even kidding you. We just cried for an hour and just held space for each other. And I was like, this is what makes life great too. There's all this sadness, but this is what makes life great. So you just have to be open to these new friendships, and they're out there. If you expect that you're going to find amazing, fabulous women, you absolutely 100% will find those women.
100%. I can't believe I didn't even think about that part of it when I was thinking of launching this platform. I think about that book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. I read it in a day. And she says, you can only imagine what will go wrong. That's what humans can only imagine, what will go wrong. We can't imagine the goodies when we take action. And it's so, so, so true. And I just think it's hilarious that I never even bargained for having all these crazy, successful, supportive women around the world. And that's what will happen if you just move in the direction and join a few groups. You're going to find your people. It's beautiful. So I'm so happy to connect with you. Okay. I want to talk just a little bit about perimenopause. It sounds to me, you shut your business down in your mid-40s, and you were in the storm of perimenopause, and you had teenagers.
They were younger then. So they were, oh God, how old are my kids now? So they were like 6-ish, 6 and 8, 9. So they were like they were little.
So you were in the maelstrom that we talk about of just everything everywhere all at once. Can you just tell me a little bit about your perimenopause? And you had IVF, which is an interesting sort of factor, I think, sometimes in perimenopause. So can you just sort of tell me? Did you know I also have a Substack? That's just a fancy way of saying I have a newsletter. But listen, it's not like every other newsletter. I am the only journalist in the world who's made menopause my beat. And each week I share research, news, products, tips, and tricks from the world of menopause and midlife. Sometimes I even write an essay. Hot Flash Inc. on Substack is where I pull together everything that's here and in the manosphere, and I break it down just for you, so that we can try and make sense of it all and figure out what to do together in real time. Join more than 5,000 women, practitioners, CEOs, and more, and become a subscriber today
You can get my podcast as well as special video and audio drops you can't get anywhere else. Sign up today at Hot Flash Inc.
I didn't know I was in perimenopause at the time, but I was also just in complete and total burnout and depletion because I'd been running my company. I never took any real time off. And I have a now 18-year-old to 16-year-old. So when my son was 2, I had twins. So it just was like life was crazy triage for a very, very long time. And I was on the pill because I had endometriosis, and I have endometriosis. I guess I didn't mention that. And so that's what caused my infertility. So my doctor wanted me to stay on the pill to kind of keep it at bay. And so it was around 45. She's like, you can actually go off the pill. You don't need to do it anymore. I went off the pill for like not even a year. And that's when perimenopause came like a wrecking ball. And I'd always had horrible periods, always had horrible PMS, just everything, anything hormone related. I always had it on steroids. I was very sensitive to it. So it's no surprise I was on this wild ride, but I didn't know it. I mean, I did know it to a certain degree, but I didn't know like the deep stuff and like any of like the real options. I was going to a naturopath. I started breaking out. I was, spotty periods, like 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 3 months, and never knowing, like bleeding out on a plane. There's a lot of people like hemorrhaging on a plane with cream pants. Like that's a true story. That happened. Nobody cared. It was like I had like a pashmina wrapped around me. It was a good time. But most importantly, I was having these crazy mood swings, like up and down, like almost on the verge of like suicidal thoughts. But at the time, I'm like, is it because I'm just burned out? Because my business, I'm a mom of 3. I don't know what I'm going to be when I grow up. And I lasted, I want to say about 8 months, and I went back on the pill because I talked to my doctor, said, I can't live like this. But we didn't have a deep conversation with my Western doctor about perimenopause. She just said, go back on the pill. So then I went back on the pill.
Did she mention it? Sorry, did she mention it?
No, it was only my naturopath who did. So that's a whole probably separate conversation, like the East Coast, West Coast, like, and then never the twain shall meet. So I had to kind of do some digging and become my own advocate. And then at 50, I went off the pill, and then I just never had a period again. So I'm going to be 54. And so now I'm menopause, right? So once I hit 51, I was officially in menopause, and I had tried some patches. They didn't really, I didn't really probably honestly give them time because I'm so sensitive to everything. I tried a couple different patches and protocols. I felt like I was going crazy, that it wasn't for me. Like, I'm just stopping cold turkey until about 2 months ago, I literally, and I wanted to talk to you about this, that I was reading Luann Brezinier's book, The Upgrade.
Great book.
And talking about, and I've talked to so many women and doctors about menopause and all, but I couldn't hear my own thing that was happening to me, which I thought was fascinating. And I think I talked to you about this a little bit when you're on my podcast. I felt like I had adult ADD. Actually, we had this conversation. I couldn't focus to save my soul. Like I managed to get a lot done, but it was almost like it took 20 times as long, and I just felt scattered all the time. And then I started reading that book, and something popped out basically talking about, it's not the brain fog, it's the inability to focus. I'm like, is that what's happening to me? Because I really honestly truly felt like I was going crazy. So then I called the doctor, talked to them, they prescribed, like, so I'm on a hormone patch now, and I do the progesterone at night. Since I have a uterus, I don't have any contraindications or anything. And literally, I don't know if it's psychosomatic, but within days, I felt almost a softening just in my brain. I can't quite explain it other than like a softening, and my ability to focus is back, Anne Marie. Like it's insane. And then also I couldn't sleep because I was having horrible hot flashes, horrible night sweats, up a million times a night. And I just, had a doctor on not too long ago on my podcast, Dr. Culver, and she's like, the number one thing we need to solve for every woman in midlife is sleep. Because if you don't sleep, everything falls apart. Everything falls apart. So I am a new woman that I was like 2 months ago. So I feel really passionate about it. I am going to be writing a book someday. It will be called You're Not Too Fucking Old, but there is going to be like a chapter to just dedicated to taking care of yourself and figuring out what you need to do, because this has been life-changing. Like to the point, Anne Marie, like my kids were like, Mom, we told you this 5 times. Like I couldn't even process what they were saying. Like, we're not going to talk to you anymore because you don't even hear what we have to say.
Yeah.
I actually going crazy? Like I felt like I was going crazy.
This is so great to hear because we talked about it and I feel the exact same thing. And it's that, and I've improved my gut health, but I really have to baby my gut. And I everything I read is that this can also help gut health. And if that can work, I'm taking my time too. Like, it sounds like you really took your time. You went back at it. You've done the work to be sort of like the CEO of your own health. Like, you pinpointed it. It's like you took the time and you took it right down to exactly what you need it for. And you're giving it the time. I love that story. I love it. I love that I want to be on it right now. I'm a little bit worried about supply over here.
I know. There's a funny story. So my husband was like, "Do you want to go for a walk?" And I just literally, it was one of those days I had to work on a proposal, and I was just like sitting at the desk all day. And I'm like, oh, and I'd been up late last night working. It's just been a weird week. It's like, oh gosh, I can't wait to pop my progesterone and just get the nighttime thing going. And then I was like, oh shit, I'm meeting with Anne Marie at 8:30. I can't take my progesterone yet. I'll be like half asleep. I like forgot for a second. I was like, oh no, thank God I didn't take him, or else I'd be a lot calmer and quieter on this podcast episode.
I'd be like, is Jen on tranquilizers?
It's just progesterone. It's my nighttime wind down. It just chills you ever so slightly, but that's the beautiful thing, right? It's
beautiful
to have that wind down and to be able to sleep and then not have the hot flashes.
It's fixed that too.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So it's fixed that, thank God. I'm so passionate about this because you said, oh, you pinpointed this, but this is me who's following this information, who has access to this information, knows I need to ask for this information. And still, just even in my friend group, when I had the episode on menopause, so many people reached out, and they know I don't talk always about menopause on my podcast, but I definitely talk about it and bring experts on. So many women reached out, grabbing me in the yoga bathroom, like, God, I needed to hear that. Because women here in the Bay Area still don't have any information. And they don't know where to go, and they don't know what's wrong with them. Everyone thinks they're going crazy and they can't sleep. And they're like, do I have to kick my husband out? And this, it impacts relationships and work. And I'm really happy to see that there was a study that came out, I think Everwell did it, about the impact of menopause in the workplace, and not understanding that women have very real things that they're dealing with. I mean, we just need to do a better job in corporate America of caring about women throughout the entirety of their lives, not just because we still barely get maternity leave in the US. And then we have kids that we have to take care of, and the whole 9 to 5 thing doesn't work, so there's so much. But I'm glad these conversations are happening. But still, I was listening to somebody today, it was a marketing podcast. And this is what I tell clients too. Just when you think you cannot stand the sound of your own voice anymore, saying the same thing, still almost nobody has heard you. So that's just you and me, Anne Marie. We have to keep on talking. And when we're sick of ourselves, just know that most people still haven't heard us.
Wow, that's amazing. I have that feeling all the time. Like, I should stop talking about this. And then I go to speak somewhere and people it's like they've heard it for the very first time. With hormone therapy, the only thing I've learned is it's incredibly individual. And it's a time, I talk about menopause like the hero's journey, because we're being called, and what we're being called is to take like radical responsibility for ourselves. And it's exciting and painful, and we don't really want to do it. But figuring out the hormone therapy piece for you, if that's the right thing for you, or how to treat this, is part of that. Like, knowing exactly what's going on, not just going to the doctor and saying, please just give me anything, right? Like, you understand exactly what you're taking and why you read that book. You've got to feel so good about it. Whereas, and that's how I want to feel when I go on it too. But there's been so many times in my life where, I don't know, they've given me a kind of birth control, like, and it's not working and I don't feel good about it. I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't really know anything about it. And so that's an opportunity now. And you're a really good example of that. And boy, your perimenopause sounds like really one of the worst confluence of events. I don't mean, it just sounds like you had everything happening. Going off the pill is a tremendous thing in itself.
And I didn't know that. No one even told me that. No one said that was a thing. Plus, I had extreme burnout from like no break of working for like, 20 years straight and having babies. And I had twins. I worked up until 36 weeks, cruising around San Francisco, scaring businessmen about how huge I was. downtown. Like, can somebody call me a cab? My ankles are swollen. Like,
Oh, you're
but
like,
that's, I mean, I also like bled out like 10 days postpartum, and I was back in the hospital for an emergency DNC and a blood transfusion. But what did I do? I came home and I was writing thank you notes like 2 days after I was discharged. Like, I'm just this product of the crazy, like, we can do it all. And I burned myself out. And then you throw perimenopause. Nobody was talking about it. I was talking about this, somebody else the other day, just about how we weren't even supportive of each other and really talking about the struggles of having babies, like back in so my kids are 18, 16, 16. So almost 20 years ago, it was kind of like, oh, you just have sex, then you have a baby. And no one was talking about the struggles of infertility. So that conversation took a really long time to happen. And then there was the lactating thing and breastfeeding. I mean, there was like the mommy wars. Like, we keep seeing all this stuff. I just wish we could wake up in a world one day where every woman was supported, everything was offered. It wasn't this big deal. And it's just, hopefully by the time my girls are in the working world, they just have this support. And it's not like, oh, well, you can take 5 minutes off for having a baby, and oh, sorry, you're having a hot flash. Because let me tell you, Anne Marie, if the men were experiencing what we experience, I think that they would have like a week off a month for their period. And then they would have, they probably have their sabbaticals around age 50 when they went through the change. I mean, can you imagine?
they wouldn't be handling it well. We know that.
Let me say this for people listening. I sat down with my husband one night, and I can't believe I hadn't done it. And I actually had a separate conversation with my kids. And I said, I need you to understand what's happening with my body. Because men I love them, but they can't even buy you a birthday present. So are they going to understand your hormonal changes? No. So I had to sit down and explain, this is what's happening. And then we can go deep too. Like, because you also experience vaginal dryness. There's all this other stuff that happens. There's estradiol cream. There's all that other stuff. We don't have time to get into all of it, but there's so much that we need to, you said this, we have to be in charge of our health, mental health too. Like, we have to just take charge and know that we deserve to feel good. And we get to be like a Maserati, like going down the highway with the proper support and not being a clunky Subaru, like, all taped together and stitched together, because it's just no way to live. It's just no way to live. It's like, it's the analogy that came to mind. Like, we get to be juicy and vital.
You have to repeat yourself with your family and your loved ones as well. You shouldn't have to, but you do, because it's not happening to them. So you do have to repeat yourself. I mean, I've had that with men in my life where they know exactly what I'm doing and what I was going through. But then when I say I'm not feeling, why, and it's like, oh, why? Like, I've told you, but I'm going to tell you again, like, gently with love. Okay. I want to talk to every 35-year-old woman and say, get yourself in order so that you don't hit a wall like I did, and experience the wasteland of the 40s where I wandered from doctor to doctor and didn't know and was scared. What's your advice for anyone at the cusp of perimenopause, or even before, if we could get them thinking about it?
I think, do your research, also find, and this is from talking to so many doctors, and I just simply demanded it again. I came from like a really loud, demanding, women, like a mom and a grandmother. Like, my mom has just sidebar, like, my dad's been having some health challenges. He's fine. But he was like, why are you here? She's like, I'm advocating. You don't even know what's happening. So she had the notebooks. They had to go to doctor, to doctor, to doctor. So we've got to be our own advocate. And, we don't have enough time to solve the insurance world and all this stuff, but be in alignment with your doctor. Or all your healthcare providers, because I've done everything. I've done Chinese medicine. I've done naturopaths. I've got my Western doctors, and really find providers that you feel like you're in a partnership with. So I know my OBGYN is very well known, and I had a complicated pregnancy with twins. And like I told you, I bled out and I have endometriosis. I had all this stuff. So if I didn't feel like I was being supported and had expert care, I would have changed. So if you feel like you're not being heard or your needs aren't being met, find somebody else if you can. Even if I know health plans and this, that, and the other referrals, it can get complicated. But just try to, advocate for yourself as much as possible. And if something doesn't feel right, trust that instinct and keep digging and keep finding. And I will tell you this, Anne Marie, and this is a cautionary tale for everyone. And this was when I was going through all the breakdown, the perimenopause, like on my knees, like, am I suicidal? Like, what is happening to me? I went in to see a new doctor, a psychiatrist, because I needed a referral to maybe do EMDR, which is like it's not talk therapy. It's, I can't explain it. You guys can look it up.
Eyes. It's eyes movement.
Yeah, it's with your eyes. And so it
Eye
tries
desensitization.
to work with like your circuitry instead of like talk therapy. And I walked into the doctor, explained everything, and she literally told me this, and I kid you not, you don't look like you're a depressed person. Yes. A doctor, a psychiatrist told me this. Because the way my way of controlling things is I can control how I look. So I'm not coming in with like my hair on fire. I look very put together, but I'm just telling you what's been happening. And she's like, you don't look like you need help.
Wow, there's the gap between the East and West, right? Like there it is right there.
And that's really dangerous. And lucky I know enough to know that that was total bullshit and got my ass out of there. She's lucky. I don't even know if I paid. I was like, I don't, give me a break. But I know that that's me, and it's really hard because most of us will listen to what our doctors have to say. So I think that's my biggest piece of advice. And especially when it comes to like the childbearing years and all that, just do your research. I had a really major surgery because of my endometriosis. I didn't find out till years later that once you kind of messed around with the ovaries, it was going to open up this whole Pandora's box of fertility troubles on top of everything I was already going to experience because of endometriosis. Maybe research my doctor better. How many of these surgeries have you performed? Like, thankfully I have my babies, but I found that stuff out later. So just do your research. And we have so many things at our fingertips. Talk to friends. Who do they like? Do they see somebody great? And sometimes, you're going to have to prioritize your spend. Like I prioritize money, like sorry, Starbucks, no new Lululemon clothes or whatever it is. And I put my money in a naturopath, and that's not covered by insurance. So that's how I chose to spend my money because, I'm investing in my health and our future. And if we don't have our health, we don't have anything. So that's where you should spend your money.
That is tremendous advice. Okay. Final wise words for starting over. Because even if you aren't starting a business, you are starting over in a way when you go through menopause, when you turn 50. You're young again. How do you do it?
When you said that, I had this like surge of joy that just shot through me. And for anyone who's on the cusp, and I can tell you this, being on the other side of perimenopause and being like as a menopausal woman now for a couple of years, something does change, and you just don't give a shit anymore. You don't. And I'll be brutally honest, like, your weight redistributes a little bit. I mean, from the outside, people say you look great, but I just, your own body, things like shift around. Of course, there's freaking cellulite, like whatever. I would sweat that in my 40s. I don't give a shit now. I have other things I'm worried about. Like I take care of myself, but in our 20s, you've been like, oh my God, like I need to go on a crash diet, or I need to like do slim fast for 3 days because I'm doing that. Now I'm like, I just don't care. And I don't care what people think. I care what people think closest to me. Like if I'm being an asshole, okay, tell me. But in general, the general population that's out there, like I don't care. I'm doing my thing. If you like it, come on board, hang out with me. We'll have fun. If not, it's cool. And I don't think you can feel that way till you really get to this midlife. It's just something really truly happens in her, and there's science behind it. I think Dr. Brisnine said this. We're not in our childbearing years anymore. So there is a shift in the brain that happens. So priorities do become different. We're not looking for mates. We're not trying to procreate the stuff that's been like embedded in our DNA for like thousands of years. And so now we get to be like the sage, and we get to decide what we want to do. And it's so incredibly freeing. And I'm not saying it's not hard. Like there's all this shit we have to deal with: parents, jobs, finances, kids. And it's, how many times have I been around the sun that when you've gotten to this place, we've, like you said this before, we've had our heroine's journey. We've walked through many a flame. This is not our first rodeo. And so I don't want it to sound like it's easier said than done. I have been brought to my knees. I have cried many a tear. I have been crazy thinking I'm like got ADD. I can't focus. Am I going to make money? Can I work? Because I can't even like make a to-do list. You will just find the solutions and just know you're worth it. You're worth the investment. You're worth the time. And it's fabulous on the other side. It truly, truly, truly is.
Oh, it's subtle, it's gentle, it's beautiful. It's the goodies that I talked about that you can't imagine. So thank you for putting it that way. You just have filled me with joy. I love hearing other women talk about it because I feel like when I talk about it to people in their 40s, they're kind of looking at me like, really? Really? But you just have to look at all the happy old ladies wandering around like your mom. They know it too.
I'll say my naturopath that said this, it was like my early 40s. She's like, trust me. She's like, when you get to the other side, because I was in the peri phase where everything was crazy. She's like, truly, and I hung on to these words, and that's why I want everyone to hang on to mine. She's like, when you get to the other side, it's amazing. She's like, this is roller coaster, and you get to the other side. And if it doesn't feel amazing, of course, get support. We already talked about that. Talk to doctors, do patches, whatever you need to do. Creams, lotions, potions, whatever you need to do to feel good, yoga retreats, whatever it is. But something happens to our brain, and it's just amazing. I feel like I'm aging backwards, Anne Marie. Someone told me today, they're like, how old are you? Because I said, welcome to the 50 club. They're like, you're not here yet. I'm like, you're catching up to me, buddy.
You are young again. And if you look at it that way, it's just much easier to get past anything that's trying to pull you back. I love it, Jen. Thank you so much. Thank you for putting off taking your progesterone to speak to me.
I'll be grabbing soon to start my wind down. But yeah, it's like a cozy, warm, snuggly blanket in the form of progesterone that you take. It's so great.
Beautiful. I love
it. Podcast. If I did, Anne Marie, it would have been a whole different podcast.
Maybe we can do another one. Progesterone Jen.
Progesterone Jen coming soon to a podcast near you. Now I'm getting punchy.
Thank you so much.
This has been amazing. Thanks for having me.
Hot Flash Inc. was created and is hosted by Anne Marie McQueen, produced and edited by Sonia Mack. The information contained in this podcast is intended for informational purposes only and is not intended for the purpose of diagnosing, treating, curing, or preventing any disease. Before using any products referenced on the podcast, consult with your healthcare provider, read all labels, and heed all directions and cautions that accompany the products. Information received through the podcast should not be used in place of a consultation or advice from a healthcare provider. If you suspect you have a medical problem, i.e. menopause or anything else, or any healthcare questions, please promptly see your healthcare provider. This podcast, including Anne Marie McQueen and any producers or editors, disclaim any responsibility from any possible adverse effects from the use of any information contained herein. Opinions of guests on this podcast are their own, and the podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about a guest's qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements and advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. This podcast is owned by Hot Flash Inc. Media.